Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a special guest with us back on the show. We have Dave of Anaal Nathrakh, or as he's better known as, Vitriol. And what does that actually stand for, Dave?
It's a really old thing. It's a Latin phrase. I'm not going to tell you the Latin because I'll probably pronounce it wrong, but it means it's a reference to the philosopher's stone, which was kind of this thing in alchemy that would allow people to turn things into gold. But it's the old term from alchemy for sulfuric acid, what we now call sulfuric acid. And I was interested in philosophy, and what I do sounds a bit like sulfuric acid, so
there you have it.
Seemed a good name. Yeah.
So, Dave, give people a little bit of a history behind the band.
God, it's going back a way. We started in the late 90s. We'd been in this terrible little band together after we just got talking in a bar one night. But after that split up, Mick had some music that he wanted to release somehow, but he didn't have a singer. We were listening to a lot of black metal and stuff back then, and a lot of it was good, but it wasn't as nasty as we thought it should be. And the best way to find something that was nasty enough was to make it. So that's what we did. We started out doing something that was really raw and brutal and that we found satisfying in a way that stuff that we were hearing wasn't. And we've just carried on doing that ever since, years now.
So when you guys first started this, you didn't actually start it as you're like, we want to go out on tour, we want to go play and that kind of thing, did you?
No, absolutely not, no. We had no dreams of being rock stars or anything of the sort. Not that we are. But no, we didn't do it for those sorts of reasons. It was very much internal motivations rather than thinking of the things that it might get us. It was something we wanted to do. And that seems probably the best way to go about any creative work. If you're trying to achieve something by doing it, you can only fail. Whereas if you're just doing what feels right, what feels good to do, then as long as you're true to yourself, then you can only succeed.
So when did you actually start playing these shows live, and how did that feel for you guys?
It was by accident almost. It was about 10 years ago now. We got a call from the BBC. Saying they had a radio show that sometimes had live sessions from bands, and did we want to do it? And we didn't have a live band. There were just the two of us at the time, but we thought, yeah, screw it, why not? Let's try it. So we had some very talented friends that we were lucky enough to be able to work with, and we put a live band together and did the session. And it turned out really well. We didn't even give any thought to whether it was possible to play these songs to begin with. Especially back then, you just couldn't find drummers that could play this kind of stuff. You can a bit more nowadays. I think it's become slightly more widespread, so drummers expect to play it. But back then, they were like unicorn tears. You couldn't find them. But then once we'd done that, a magazine here in the UK, Terrorizer magazine, they were having like an end of year party kind of thing, and they heard that we put a band together for that radio thing and said, did we want to do a show? So yeah, we thought, screw it again, why not? And yeah, it was quite an experience. It was really abrasive. It was really exhausting as much as anything else, but it was exhilarating too, and the people at the show really reacted to it. It was stage diving and big mosh pit and all of that kind of stuff, and it felt really satisfying to do it. So we've just carried on since, really.
So Dave, how do you go about picking, like when you go on these tours? Do you have a set regulars that come on tour live with you, or do you have to pick people up every time you go out there?
To begin with, there was a bit of changing. I mean, the first show that we ever played live, we had half of Napalm Death were the rest of our band. So that was, I mean, we were blown away just by the opportunity to do that. But since then, there's been a couple of people come and gone, but we tend to stay fairly stable. We've got a fairly established live lineup. There's been a couple of changes recently. We've got our drummer. Previous drummer couldn't do it anymore, but we managed to find someone quite local who's similarly fantastic at playing the drums and can pull it off. And our previous live guitarist had to disappear from the scene for a while because he had the misfortune of having a baby with his wife. Or fortune, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, but we've got a friend of ours who's stepped in on guitar, but for the most part, it's fairly stable.
Now, the last time we talked was when your last album was released in 2014. So what have you guys been all up to since then?
Oh, we've done quite a lot of stuff, obviously, in 2 years. With we've been to bed. We got out of bed, drank a coffee. No, we did. I mean, probably the most noteworthy thing that we've done in that time was only a couple of weeks ago. We were lucky enough to go to Japan for the first time and play 3 shows out there. Neither of us had ever been to the place before, and it's everyone, I think, certainly in the Western world, sees Japan as this kind of exotic, mysterious place. So yeah, it was a huge privilege to go and play there. And we managed to get to Russia a couple of times, gigs in Moscow and St. Petersburg and stuff. So yeah, we've been getting around the place, and it's been hugely enjoyable to see places like this because, well, bluntly, neither of us could afford to go on holiday to these places. So this is the way we get to do it. We're really lucky.
And it was nice too because you were the headliners in Japan. So what are like the audiences like or the fans like in these places like Japan and Russia who don't have the same, onslaught of metal like the rest of the world has?
Very often you'll find they're appreciative. They really care when bands turn up because say you're in New York or somewhere, there's a different band through town, twice a day in comparison to some of these places. So they were really enthusiastic, really chaotic shows, and it was tremendous. Having said that, though, I mean, another of the like milestone things we got to do since the last album, we did a tour across North America. And here's me saying that in New York or wherever the bands pass through every day. But I mean, we played in the St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn. That was probably one of the best shows on the tour. So, maybe going to gigs all the time isn't such a bad thing. But that was amazingly cool as well. I mean, Mick, the other guy in the band, he lives in California. But the rest of us have seldom, if ever, had the opportunity to go there. So
nice.
To go clear across the country in the space of 2 weeks, it was kind of tiring. We did like 8,500 miles in a van in 2 weeks, but it was a wonderful experience. Just seeing the different landscapes across the country. It's such a huge place. Meeting all those people and playing all these shows, it was great. It was really superb.
It is, and that's the funny thing about the United States. People think of it as, a country the size of all the countries over there in Europe, and it's like a lot huger, You could fit a couple of those countries in the United States, and a lot of them don't know what to expect, how vast it is out here. But I'm glad you didn't have any bad experiences over here, Dave.
No, it was all cool. I mean, I'm pretty sure that my whole country would fit inside Texas. It's a totally different scale. But because of that scale, I mean, if you compare, you've probably done it yourself, but if you compare driving through, California, Nevada, kind of the deserts, and then up into Arizona, all the mad canyons, that's like one planet. And then if you go to a different part of the country, up north with all the trees and the mountains and everything, it's like a totally different planet. So the size of the country makes it a really breathtaking place just to travel through. I mean, aside from playing shows or anything, just looking at the place, it's amazing.
Absolutely. So, Dave, October 28th, you guys are going to be releasing your new album off of Metal Blade Records called The Whole of the Law. But first of all, this is the same date 2 years ago that your last album was released. Now, is that just a coincidence?
I didn't know that.
Yes, because I was looking through, I'm like, October 28th, I had to look at it twice. I'm like, yes, it was the exact same date 2 years ago.
Oh, I didn't realise that at all.
Oh, okay, so never mind. So what does the title of the album relate to, Dave?
Most people would probably recognise it as a line from Aleister Crowley. And the weird thing is, it isn't a reference to Aleister Crowley. It's just I thought the way that the words go together captures an idea quite well and puts it in a punchy, memorable sort of title way. But the idea behind it is really, it's about conflict, and the idea that a lot of conflict that goes on in the world is based on this really nasty psychological impulse not to win the conflict, but to annihilate the opposition. You hear it in slogans for wars and stuff like that. It's phrases like "bomb them into the Stone Age" or the mutually assured destruction. These kinds of things. It seems there's something really vicious going on there, really emphatic and hysterical. And I think that part of that kind of idea lies behind the way power works in the world, full stop. The way countries relate to one another, the way people relate to one another. I'm not saying it's the only way you can look at it, and I'm not saying it should be that way. It just strikes me that there's something of that idea that is out there. So this vicious conflict seems to be, to some extent, the whole of the law, and that it ties in with the cover. I don't know if you've received the artwork.
Yes, I have.
And it's originally from a painting by this guy called Bouguereau, but the way that Mick has manipulated the painting, it makes it look almost like a statue, kind of a like iconic depiction of this vicious struggle between these guys. And I just think it's kind of a fact of the world that we don't necessarily pay attention to all the time, but it's always there in the background.
And that being said, about the album cover, it still looks very painting-esque, if you will. And so tell us a little bit about the artist then, since we're mentioning it.
William Bouguereau, his name is. I was in, I believe it was New York, actually, strangely, as I mentioned it. I was in a museum there, and I remember I turned a corner, and one of that artist's paintings, not the one we've used, a different painting, but it was hung on the wall, and it really struck me. It was amazing. First of all, it's huge, and second, the way he'd used light and the way he depicted these like fantastical creatures, but made it sort of dream-like, real. I just thought it was an amazing piece of art. So then, a couple of years later, we were thinking about what to do with the cover of this, and we weren't sure, but Mick's very talented artist, so would he make a painting for it? Would we do a collage or do whatever? And we were looking around the internet just for general ideas for inspiration, and we came across the painting that we've used. And again, it's a really striking image, and it just seemed to capture something of the idea behind some of the stuff on the album so well. And then Mick took it and focused in on, because the original painting's a little larger, there's some figures in the background and so on, but he focused in on those two guys in the middle and treated the colours and made it look like almost like a statue or something, I think. Like some kind of the iconic emblem of something happening. And I just love it. I think it's a really bold, striking image, and it fits so well with the subject matter on the album. I'm really pleased with it. I think it's one of our best cover images, I think.
It is. It's beautiful. It's, like you said, it's a work of art. And so, Dave, so tell us then how you approached this album lyrically.
By observing the world and being driven mad by it.
There you go.
That's kind of how I always do it. But obviously, the world changes before your very eyes. But the idea in general is to hold up a mirror to things that I see going on. Sometimes the mirror's sort of slightly metaphorical or something. It's not literally in mundane language saying there's some guy getting on a bus or something like that. But it's holding up a mirror, and it's a mirror to aspects of the world that we would often rather not see, or maybe we just don't see them, or something like that. And again, I'm not saying that the world should be the way it's presented in our music. I mean, it would be a pretty frightening place. But all of it seems to draw on the way the real world is to me. Just aspects of it that we try to gloss over a lot of the time.
Now, okay, so with just the two of you guys, basically, how do you do this type of thing musically? I mean, how do you write it, and how do you go about recording it?
Well, there really isn't much of a formal writing process. It's very much, we go with our gut feeling kind of thing. We get a sort of, certainly Mick does, he gets an atmosphere in his head or something like that, and basically just channels it into music without thinking about it too much, which I think is good. It wouldn't suit, writing a piano concerto or something like that. That you need to think about that very carefully. But with this kind of music, I think for listeners as well as for us writing it, I think it's all about gut impact. It has to feel right and feel intuitive. And that's very much how he writes the music, and that's what he does. He writes all the music. I don't write pretty much any of it. And I've never heard the music before we record the vocals, usually. Wow. So I just go in with all the ideas that I've accumulated and jotted down, and just react to the music. Again, the idea is for it to be a kind of instinctive reaction to the way the music feels. And hopefully that then comes across as something that a listener can get hold of at that similar sort of instinctive level. It hits you in the gut rather than the brain first and foremost, because that's what I think music's best at.
Well, listening to the first single off the album, Depravity Favors the Bold, that's exactly what it did to me. It was just like so much going on. It has such like an almost raw black metal sound to it throughout the whole song, with just a few seconds of like that quick little clean backing, which is to me an element that I think makes you guys sound so unique. Now, was there any particular reason you guys chose this as the first song to release to the public?
Yeah, it felt like it had again, using words like instincts and feelings and stuff, but it felt right. Because if you're gonna announce something to the world, it's got to kick you in the teeth a little bit. I think if it was, because we do try to include quite varied atmospheres. A lot of all of our stuff and a lot of this album will bludgeon you into submission, but there's subtleties to it. But it, as a sort of mission statement kind of thing, you want it to be a impact straight away. So yeah, we picked it for that reason. But at the same time, there's always a little bit of complexity, of a few shades of a few shades of black mostly, but they're slightly different shades. And I like that. I like this song for that. It's got a little bit of variation to it as well, but overall the effect is, as it was intended, is kind of bludgeoning, and that feels a good way to say hello to the world again after a couple of years.
And it's really fun to listen to for the first time, I have to say. And what have some early reactions been to it?
Most people seem quite enthusiastic.
That's good.
We've done some shows recently over the past 3 or 4 weeks, and we've been playing that song live, and it seems to have gone down really well. The people have been going crazy, just like all the other songs. So yeah, the reaction seemed good so far.
And can we be expecting a video anytime soon?
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed.
We always love those. So what kind of formats is it going to be released on?
There'll be CD and vinyl and a digital download version.
And is there like some pre-orders going on yet?
Yeah, I believe there are pre-orders already available, or if they're not, then they will be. They will be pretty soon. So yeah, it's all starting to kick off now.
Okay, cool. So what are the best sites that people could go to learn more about the band and what's going on with you guys?
Well, I mean, there's basic background stuff and everything on Wikipedia, but we tend to keep our Facebook quite updated.
There you go. So people could go learn more about what's going on with you guys on Facebook. And, well, there you have it. Anaal Nathrakh, new album, The Whole of the Law, coming out via Metal Blade Records on October 28th. And, Dave, thank you for coming on the show to tell us about the album, and all the best to you with the new album and out there and everything else.
Yeah. Thanks for the support and the help. It's been nice talking to you again.
Okay.